Chris, what's up, dude?
Yo, what's up, John?
Thanks for making the trip out here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me.
Come from the high desert?
Yeah, it's not the
Where
bad
at
of
in
a
the high
drive.
desert?
About the Apple Valley area.
Oh, cool.
It's burning about 106 right now, which
You're,
is not
You're
bad.
welcome to have you out here. Then. Yeah,
I'm glad to be out here. You know,
Yeah.
nicer weather. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so Stryker Investigations. Talk to me about it, man. Like, it's how long you guys been in business, and give me the scope of like what you guys can do.
Yeah, so Stryke National Investigations. So we've been in business as Stryke just over a year. It's a newer brand.
Okay.
But we've been around for longer than that. Before that, it was a different company name. It was just kind of myself and the company and growing it. And one of the things about us is that we niche in insurance defense, insurance fraud and defense. So unlike other investigation firms in the country or in the state, we don't handle the, cheating husband, spouse, and,
Yeah.
all that stuff. I mean, I've done it before. It's some interesting stuff.
I want to talk about that. That's hilarious.
Quick
That has sounds
disclosure
so-
that there's a lot of that in OC. But we don't deal with that now.
Sure.
And so we just deal with insurance claims. And that's,
Okay.
Primarily because of my background. I have some claims background working SIU with some carriers. So that's what we focused in.
That's cool. When you say insurance claims, this could be like a GL claim, an auto claim, anything.
Yeah, all lines. Yeah, so auto, personal, commercial,
Yeah.
GL, workers' comp. We're very heavy in workers' comp. Probably that's like 75%
Okay.
of our business. Property, we get involved in subrogation matters. I mean, anything and everything claims-wise, that's our language. That's what we do.
Yeah. So one of the things that we say about work comp out here is that it's legal fraud. And the reason why we
Like that,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it feels that way. The whole system is incentivized to allow. I don't want to say that word. To allow manipulation from like doctors, attorneys, claimants, all those things, and they're all not intentionally colluding together, but they all have incentives that are make it in such a way where it kind of makes sense to like, oh, maybe we exaggerate this, maybe we keep this from the adjuster, like those kind of things. So like, when you look at California specifically, what do you think like the prevalence of fraud really is? Because it's hard to prove fraud.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really hard. Like the thumb is so deeply on the side of the employee that like proving fraud is like a very high bar to get to. And even when you get all the way there, you're like, hey, there's video evidence of this person doing something nonsensical when it comes to their work restrictions. And like, how does that work?
Yeah, no, I mean, California is like one of those slap in the wrist states where it's like, hey, you do it. All right, here's a slap in the wrist. Don't do it again, right? And then you do it again, and then they'll just slap you again.
Yeah.
But when it comes to proving fraud, yeah, it is difficult in California. I've done it before, filing a case when I was in SIU working for carriers, from the beginning to filing it with the DA's office and getting cases prosecuted. And I could tell you that, there's different burdens of proofs that you gotta meet. If it's just for a claims denial, then it's just based on the preponderance of evidence. You gotta just prove that it's more likely than not that, that the incident did not occur as reported.
Sure.
And usually that can support a denial. But when it comes to prosecuting fraud, I mean, you gotta prove beyond reasonable doubt that this person had knowledge and intent
Yeah.
to file this fraudulent claim, that they misrepresented material information, that they somehow gain some sort of financial component, and that it was them that filed that
So
claim.
you'd have to like essentially
you gotta
see
meet
a guy
those-
eat a banana, throw that banana peel all on the ground,
Yeah.
and then slip on that banana peel all on video.
Yeah, and look, it's not impossible. I've done it on the auto side,
Yeah.
and also we've done it on the work comp side too. But it is more of a tedious process, and I think unfortunately, the ones that are being hurt are the employers a
Sure.
lot, because ultimately it's it's, if you want to prosecute a claim for fraud, then there's going to be more investigation that has to go on to be able to get the necessary evidence to prosecute it.
Sure.
And who's paying for that? A lot of times is the employer, right? So then the employer has to make the decision of like, well, do we really want to go,
What are we chasing?
a
this for?
couple months more investigating where we've already denied the claim, but now we want to prosecute it for
Yeah.
fraud. And that's where I think you see kind of that reduction of prosecutions.
The
or at
juice
least,
no longer becomes worth the squeeze
yeah,
type situation.
Exactly.
So when you said the employers face most of the burden, like they definitely do, and that's like one of the questions is like a lot of the premium that the clients will be paying, like there's fraud, like a significant amount of that is baked in there. Fraud's baked in there.
That's like 10%. Yeah. About,
is that
yeah,
what
about 10%. Yeah.
Wow. Do you have any other stats on like fraud? Like what is the actual like gross fraudulent insurance activity that operates in the United States? And if you have it to California, that'd be super interesting.
Yeah, I know we recently published something on our website. It was something like 30 something billion dollars a year just in fraud. I mean, it's insane, right? So the people that are within that industry committing the fraud, and you could see how there's a big financial incentive to do that. And
100%.
I mean, years ago when I used to be out in the field in LA investigating fraud rings, it was like the doctors colluding with the attorneys, colluding with the body shops, and enhancing the damages on the vehicles and claiming 5 passengers instead of 1 passenger and pursuing all those BI claims. I mean, it was nasty, right? And every single claim, it was like thousands and thousands of dollars. And some of them, we caught them. Some of them, there's just isn't enough evidence to prove fraud. I mean, they might get denied or partially denied, but there isn't enough evidence to prove fraud. And, you know, it could be frustrating.
Yeah, I would imagine that's very frustrating. Like, hey, like this looks like it. It smells like it. We know it's it. We just don't have like the actual smoking gun.
Like the smoking gun.
Yeah. That's got to be so frustrating.
Yeah.
That's brutal. What do you think like some trends are in regards to fraud that you've seen over the past, I guess, how long have you been doing this?
For 8 years now.
Okay.
Insurance, defense. Okay. Yeah.
So for the last 8 years, have you seen any trends that have either slowed down or some that have picked up? And like, what do you see kind of moving forward? Like one of the things that we see on our end, just to give you some context, is like site claims.
Right.
Site claims are becoming like way, way, way more prevalent.
Yeah.
And I think it's like where the bureaucracy is putting their attention, wherever their attention is, they're going to find something else.
Yeah.
And so what do you see as like that?
No, I agree. Site claims it's one of the big ones, increasing over time. And I don't know, it might be a society thing. It might be just people operating differently nowadays. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of site claims. We actually had an interesting one recently where there's this county employee, as we work with public entities too, and she filed a psychiatric claim because the stress is coming from completing her timesheet every 2 weeks.
That's not stressful to me. I get it.
Right. And that's the only basis of the stress claim. There's nothing else that's stressing other than just completing the timesheet every 2 weeks, right? Life. So then, I mean, with those, you can pursue like a good faith personnel act defense, you know, and that type of stuff. But to kind of defend those claims. But there's some other ones that, you know, they're certainly exaggerate. I mean, with the other lines of insurance, like auto, you see a lot of the stuffing passengers. You know, again, somebody rear ends somebody else. Let's say you're insured rear ends a claimant vehicle, and the car has tinted windows, and they never even bothered to walk over and verify how many people were inside the car.
Yeah.
Then the claim gets filed, and all of a sudden it's 5 people inside, and all of them are super injured from a minor fender bender.
Yeah.
Right. So there's like lack of causation, forensic methods that you can take to kind of defend those claims. But again, it's like, it's still money and it's still process to defend those claims when they come in.
Man, that's so. There needs to be like larger recourse for doing that kind of stuff.
And it's a felony. I mean, it's a felony in California. Yeah, insurance fraud. It's a felony. So at least that's a tool that we use in the back of our pocket where we talk to somebody and say, look, as long as you're fully truthful with me, like everything's going to be okay. But understand that if you misrepresent information intentionally, that is insurance fraud and it's a felony. And sometimes when you throw that felony word in, like people start thinking about it twice. They're like, wait, hold on. I thought I was just going to get slapped in the wrist. Right?
Yeah.
And they might think about it, you know, twice.
Yeah. So if you're getting like, let's say ICW, right? They give you 10 folks, like, hey, there's smoke around these 10 folks.
Right.
Out of those 10 on a work comp perspective, like, are they all fraudulent? Like, do you ever come in a place where there's like, hey, this is actually not fraudulent, or like, hey, we just don't have proximal cause, like the smoking gun?
Yeah. No, I would say, you know, from like, let's say from a 10 claim scale, I would say probably 1 might be fraud, like a complete malicious misrepresentation and bogus claim.
Okay.
Probably one. Then there's going to be a handful that they arose out of legitimate injuries, but then they're just malingering,
Okay.
or they're just dragging out the process. And that's where I think you see a lot of more of that stuff in work comp.
Yep.
Is that you see more of the soft fraud versus the hard fraud.
Okay.
And the hard fraud is more, this totally did not happen, and this person is just completely fabricating this whole thing to get benefits. And then there's the people that actually legitimately got injured, which I think is the majority of workers. You know, people get injured, and they should be taken care of. But then through the process, they determine, you know what? It's actually nice staying home and still getting, work comp benefits and, getting disability and, I can spend time with my kids and all this stuff. And then they start thinking about it like, you know what? I'm going to tell the doctor that I'm still really bad in pain. I still can't be bending, stooping, doing all this stuff so that he can, extend my disability. And then I stay home and continue collecting. And then that's where like Sabrosa comes in, right?
Yep.
Where we go out and actually like verify whether they're as injured as they claim.
You're good at volleyball. You should be able to.
Right, you're good at volleyball, and you can certainly like deadlift and do all this stuff, but you can't bend. You know, at work, and so then you see some of that stuff too.
That's wild. It seems like an unreasonable. It seems like an unreasonable job that people have to do to like, especially for the doctors, to have like a subjective individual's experience. Like my back still really does hurt. Like that is the problem right there. Is like, hey, that's like one of the things that we always preach is like, we don't think indemnity cost is acceptable on any claims.
Right.
So we have 3 different layers when it comes to our return to work, which I was telling you earlier about. It's like, if you're going to do something productive for the company, fantastic. Best case scenario, they're in there, they're supervised by you.
Sure.
Next level is get them to return to work at a nonprofit. And then the third level is like, well, you're going to be at home, but you're going to have to make lunches for a food bank.
Yeah.
So they're doing something at all time with like input, what's your output?
Right.
But when people sit at home and watching Judge Judy and hanging out with their kids, like that is the issue, is like it creates a massive disincentive to come back to work.
Yeah. And everybody pays for it too, and that's why, I guess the state made it a felony is because, people filing fraudulent claims, or at least dragging the claims out, malingering them, it increases everybody's premiums.
Yep.
And so everybody ends up being a victim of that. And the reality, look, some people are badly hurt, and they do have to be home, and they can't physically, perform the capabilities that they had before. And sometimes that is verified through investigative methods, as we find, this person's actually legitimately injured. Yeah. You should take care of them like right away, or give them the care. Like don't litigate this, or don't drag it out, because you as a TPA, as an employer, like you're probably going to incur more cost, and then they're going to become litigated, and that's going to double at least the cost of the claim, and it's going to go sideways, right? Like take care of this person. So I think it's important, like for investigations firms and for any service provider, it's like, hey, don't get tunnel vision and just look and just think that, okay, we're getting involved because we're just looking for fraud. Is you're there as a neutral provider, and you're just looking to either confirm or disprove the claim. Like you're just trying to verify.
Yeah, you know what the facts actually are.
Yeah, you just want to know the facts, and if the facts indicate that this person's legitimately injured and that's all they display, then that's what it is.
Yeah, get their physical therapy done so they don't avoid surgery. That happens all the time too. So we have I don't mean to talk about our business, but we have an employee liaison position here at Whiteboard, and their entire job is to hold the employee's hand throughout their entire life, their injury and their claim, making sure they actually feel cared for, heard, and understood. If they don't like the care they're getting from the doctor, we help them file a change of care. Yeah. If they're having trouble picking up the prescriptions because the adjuster won't get back to them, like we help them do that. Yeah. If they can't get to the doctor's office, we get an Uber ride. So it's like that actual care for those folks that legitimately get injured is the trick. I mean, most litigated claims, not most, I'd say 50% of litigated claims come from the fact that they feel like they are either, before this happens, they're going to get neglected by the insurance company or TPA. Yeah. Maybe they had a family member get injured and they're like, hey, this attorney like helped me out. I got a good settlement. Like I got everything I needed done. But it feels like they don't get the care and the love that they need from the insurance carrier.
So they need somebody to advocate for them, and that's when they look for an attorney. Yeah, no, I think you hit it right in the nail, and that's exactly right. You see, and those are the type of services that sometimes people don't think about, But like, for example, like the brokerage firms like Whiteboard that have those advocates there to be able to, in a way, grab the injured worker by the hand and guide them through the process. I mean, that's going to prevent litigation dramatically.
Yeah, it has. That's like one of the things is you said something about like hard and soft fraud. Like there's soft costs involved on this stuff, and you might not see the benefit because it's like it's hard to determine like, well, this, if we weren't involved, this would have gone litigated. So how do you even like measure that? Like how do you monetize like that situation, like a thing that did not happen?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Unknown. And so that's always a challenge for us to really articulate that value because it is like an unknown cost.
Yeah.
But I guess like from your perspective, when you say like 10% are like completely BS claims, like not real, and then a handful of other ones, like, well, maybe there's exaggeration going on, right? There's a gradient between like what happened and where they are today. And how do you determine like what's real and what's not?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's, 10%. I mean, that's right about there as far as the amount of claims. And that's why, it's important. I like that you brought up that point because, investigation sometimes has the perception that you gotta, as an investigator, you gotta be really hard on somebody when you contact them and say, hey, I'm the investigator. You need to talk to me and corner them and interrogate them. And that's not really the case, right? I think at least one of the things that we like to do is, understanding the claims component and understanding that, litigation prevention is important. That's going to outright help mitigate cost overall. For sure. Is when we contact somebody, it's like taking the honey approach and say, hey, look, I'm a representative on behalf of this, your employer. Sometimes we don't even introduce ourselves as an investigator because that may, create some concerns. And people might think that they did something wrong. And not every time that we talk to somebody, it means that they did something wrong. Sometimes there's an COE component, and we're just trying to determine did this arise out of employment and it occurred in the course of employment. And that's it. As long as the elements are there, then it's a legitimate injury and it's a good claim, right? And so there's no need to introduce ourselves sometimes like, hey, I'm an investigator and you're under investigation, right? Like that's not really the objective.
Which is the reality of what you're saying. Like, hey, your job is to like gather all the facts. Yeah. And then from those facts, derive a conclusion.
And still keeping in mind that this is an injured worker and they probably never been through the process before. They probably don't know the terminology, like what's a QME, what's an IME, what's a PD rating, like what's all that stuff, right? Sure. And so being having still that service, as investigators for that injured worker and being able to extend the same customer service that their employer would give them. Sure. That hand in hand would contribute to that litigation prevention and ultimately getting the information that we need, right?
That's really beautiful.
Be able to process the claim.
That's like really cool Lior. Right. And Sean at EM Legal.
Yeah, great guys.
Some of the things they talk about when they go into deposition is like the same thing, honey. Yeah. Like, give them the honey. It's like, hey, you let out enough line where people actually tell you the truth. Yeah. And there are 10% of people are going to be dirtbags. But most people, like, if you literally are just coming at from, like, an empathetic place, understanding that, hey, this is a human over here. This is probably confusing and scary in a lot of ways. Right. Like, you're going to get the truth most of the time. Yeah. And I think when I hear that, I always looked at an investigation the same way as, like, you kind of pan it out, which is like, I'm an investigator. Mm-hmm. I'm here to like get to the bottom of things. And that can be a very like walls are up.
Which could be on a strategic point too, right? Sometimes, and that's where kind of the strategy comes in. And I think, I wasn't paid to say this, but I think that's one of the things that I liked about working with Whiteboard, on the accounts that we work with is being able to have kind of that strategy and being able to kind of roundtable the claims and really understand, okay, what's the objective here, right? Okay, this employer is dealing with a lot of questionable claims. They're dealing with a lot of potential fraud stuff. Okay, maybe it is a good idea when we show up to represent ourselves as investigators so that it changes the culture of the company and people understand that if they file a claim, it's going to get investigated. Right. Okay, it's going to get investigated. And we've seen with some accounts, like especially like the ones that we work with Whiteboard, that's decreased the amount of, questionable claims over time, like just representing ourselves as investigators. Because now what is that mindset of the people? Oh, if I file a claim, there's going to be an investigator that's going to show up and they're going to question me about it. And sometimes that adds that layer there that they might think twice about.
Yeah.
You know,
Which is another soft benefit right there. Something
Right.
like, hey, we've done this. Here are the hard cost savings, and then soft costs. Like, hey, look, just the litigation rates have gone down.
Yeah.
You just need a long enough time horizon to actually see those trends go in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. So sometimes using the title does actually work in a benefit. But it really depends on kind of that claim strategy, right? It's not one blade single sided and this is what's going to work. Is sometimes you got to use different blades to cut it differently. And you really have to understand the claim, round table it, and develop a game plan to see what the ultimate objective is.
Love it. In regards to Stryke investigations, can you walk me through like the breadth of what you guys can do?
Yeah, so we have a couple major departments. We have the surveillance department, which essentially is your typical going out undercover and video documenting a claimant per se, and verifying if they're actually injured to the degree that they claim. I think that's our largest and our busiest department, especially in California.
I would imagine.
Yeah, and then we have our claims investigation department, and this is everything from AOE, COE investigations, subrogations, scene inspections, looking for any additional evidence that may be necessary through the collection of recorded statements or non-recorded to support the claim or be able to make a claim decision so the examiner can make an informed claim decision. Then we have our records research department, which is more medical canvassing. It's more of sometimes we've actually had recently, this sounds wild, but there was a claim filed, and as we were doing some research, we found that this person's actually deceased. So the claim was filed under the claimant's name, but as we're doing some research, there's a death record for this person. We're like, wait, is this right? Right? And so we start looking into it, and then we go through the county and we request an official copy of the death certificate, and this person's like deceased. So now that becomes another issue, right? That becomes another issue with the applicant law firm that filed that. And that just tells you about
who are you representing right now. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it, right? They signed this document, and that's it, right? So, like if any of those records are needed, like we have we can obtain those records. And medical canvassing, I think it's a underrated and underutilized tool that has a lot of benefit to it, and finding if somebody has pre-existing medical treatment. And maybe that can arise some pre-existing injuries. And that could be an opportunity for apportioning the claim, or maybe having another entity, third party join the claim. Yeah. Right. So there's cost savings there too. That makes sense. And then we have our intelligence and analytics department. And this one's the one I think it sounds the coolest. And it's analysts that we have working, and they basically are doing background social media. If we're doing surveillance, they're doing pre-surveillance research. So if we need to locate somebody, these are our people that are gonna locate somebody. And then we have some cool tools within there where if they have, if we have a photo of a person, then we can run facial ID on the person and then look for it anywhere online, and it doesn't have to be just that one photo. As long as it recognizes the facial characteristics, it'll find us maybe like hidden profiles for this person. Then we have some other cool tools within that department, such as AI monitoring for social media. So if we find, let's say, your social media accounts, and we're like, hey, you know what, John seems like a hiker, and he seems like a surfer, and we're sure that he's gonna post something about doing that, but he just doesn't have any content right now. Then we'll put monitor on your profiles, and it'll monitor it 24/7 for us. The minute that you post something, it's gonna capture it for us. So if you delete it within 5 minutes, doesn't matter. It is already captured, already has all the metadata, so that we can authenticate it in court. So that kind of alleviates a human person having to check back and forth. And there could be a lot of margin for missing something, right? If it's a human person, whereas AI, I mean, it's...
What a beautiful way to augment what you guys are doing. Yeah. That's so cool. That's really cool. So that, to me, would lead to the next question is, there's a bunch of investigation companies out there. How do you feel you best differentiate yourself from the other ones out there?
Definitely the innovation and the technology portion. I'm probably and I last I checked, but maybe there's somebody new, but I'm probably one of the youngest like owners of a PI firm.
Sure.
And I think one of the advantages of that is the tech and the innovation portion. I mean, it's we're always looking for different ways to be able to give more for our clients, not necessarily charging more, but just adding more value to our current products.
Sure.
And sometimes we do things like we have different projects that we do, like beta projects where we'll offer certain services for free to some clients for the purpose of just getting feedback on those particular
That's cool.
On those particular services. We're not charging them a single dime for it.
Yeah, you're just doing like A/B testing.
But it's like, hey, look, you let's say have a claim closure project, right? We know how to help you close those claims. Give us your 15, 20 most nasty claims that just been around for a long time. Let us do, X, Y, and Z on these claims. We're not going to charge you a single dime, but the value that we want in return is we want you to give us your honest feedback as to what you think about our reports, what you think about our service, what you think about our processes, and let us know if there's something that we can improve on, that you think that, hey, you're lacking on this, and I think this would be really good for you to implement.
Sure.
And sure, it is an investment that we're doing up front. I haven't seen other firms, at least that I know, do that. And that's one thing that we do year round. Yeah. Yeah. Because for us, it's not making a quick buck.
You can play the long game.
Yeah. It's not making a quick buck. We're not looking to partner with somebody and just make, a couple $1,000 out of them in a month. We're looking for that 15, 20, 30 year relationship. And I think those relationships, you really have to be in the game with that, employer, with that broker, with that, TPA. You got to have some skin in the game. And if you don't have skin in the game, then you're not really going to be incentivized to advocate or look out. And that's what we want, is we put some skin in the game so that we're incentivized to perform.
I love it. So last question I have for you. If an employer is watching this right now, what would you tell them are like some of the best fraud prevention methods like in the marketplace right now? And if they're not working with you guys and not asking their carrier to work with you, what would you tell them?
They're missing out.
Okay.
I think it sounds simple, but I think one of the best fraud prevention methods is clear documentation, just documenting everything. And that sometimes goes hand in hand with HR. Hey, somebody gets reprimanded for something, document it. Hey, an employee mentioned that they were playing soccer out on the weekend and they, twisted their ankle a little bit. Have that supervisor that heard that documented on their personnel file. Just develop a clean timeline of everything that's going on. This is not something that has to be publicized. This is not something that you have to give to the employees. It's just document everything that of information that you receive. You never know when it might come into play. Right. Yeah. But when it does come into play and somebody files, let's say 2 months after that comment was mentioned, and now they say, hey, you know what? Now there's a CT claim, cumulative trauma, because all my time here, I, developed strain and in my right knee and all this stuff. You're like, wait a minute. Just 2 months ago, you mentioned to supervisor X and X that you were playing soccer and you injured or you twisted your knee.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
How was that slide tackle?
Yeah.
What did that do to your knee?
Right. And so that out the bat, would mitigate that claim. It might even cause the claim to be withdrawn because now this person understands like, oh shoot, you know what? Now they know that I actually injured myself outside of work. I may not pursue this anymore.
Sure.
So you might just free yourself out of a claim. Right. But at least you have some sort of timeline, and that information is going to be so critical because once an investigation firm gets involved, whether it's us or somebody else, and if it's another provider, what they should be doing is they should be requesting all that information to be able to fully understand what this person. Yeah.
That's I heard that from Lior. I've heard that from you. I've heard that from like our HR directors. The importance of documentation cannot be overstated.
Yeah.
Especially here in California. And I think a lot of folks look at that because it's soft benefit.
Yeah.
And there's got to be a way to monetize, or at least not monetize, at least go through like, hey, this is soft benefit. You are not going to see it. But if you like spend this extra time doing this documentation, this is going to save you $50,000, $100,000 over the next 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
And that's like the difficult part. So there needs to be a strategy somewhere to essentially like the compliance cost for doing this documentation. How do we translate that into the executive team in a way of dollars?
Exactly.
So that needs to be, that we need to think about that.
Yeah. I mean, they don't have to be a fraud expert. They don't have to know all the red flags.
Yeah.
But if they just clearly document everything, then, you know, that's only going to benefit in a way. And I mean, other benefits too is, you know, partner up with the right team players, like the right brokers, right? Like, you know, obviously like Whiteboard obviously has like claims advocates, you know, they have return to work program. Obviously you guys work with top defense firms and investigations firms too. It's like if you have somebody like that on your team as an employer and these are the experts, then they're advocating on your behalf, then that's already a component that gets added to their team that they didn't have before, and that's that fraud mitigation there as well.
I love it. Chris, thanks for the time, man.
Of course, thanks
really
for having me.
You, dude.
Yeah, always, man.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's get out.